Okay. Okay. Now it's his turn.
Now it's my turn. So hi, I'm Vladimir. Can you put up the yellow screen thingy? Yes, yes. Yeah, micro. Is it on? Oh, there I am. Okay. The micro ist direkt an der Kamera. The micro is on the camera. No. So again, hi, I'm Vladimir of vpme.de, introducing the QD quad drum voice module. vpme.de is short for Vladimir Pantelic Music Electronic. It's Dieter Döpfer is called Dieter Döpfer Musik Electronic, so I thought I'd copy that. And also this domain was available, so there you go. A little bit about myself, how I came into Eurorack. My history is I'm not a musician. I play the bass very badly. But I've been working on consumer music electronic for the last 15 years, designing MP3 players, portable media players, portable video players, Android phones and tablets. Yeah, I came into Eurorack by total accident. It's like, you know, like that drug addiction that you just slide into. Because it turned out that a guy I was talking to on IRC is like WhatsApp, but for very old people. I was talking to a guy for a long time about topics like embedded computers, embedded Linux. And at some point he told me, oh, by the way, in my spare time, I'm making the software for a couple of modular makers like Synthesis Technologies. So, oh, interesting, what's Eurorack? And he explained to me what Eurorack is. And I said, oh, that's lab equipment. I know that. I have an empty rack in my cellar. So, and at the same time, I was a bit bored at work and thought, let's do something new and fun. Because work turned out to be more about programming Android than programming microcontrollers. And I wanted to go back into microcontrollers. So I said, let's start and build some Eurorack modules using microcontrollers. So, and then I found out about synth DIY, about other people designing their own modules. And I found a forum that's called Muffwiggler, and I found there was a DIY section there. And I thought, okay, I'm going to design some modules, and I'm going to present them there. And then all these people there are going to chip in and their 2 cents, and we're going to collaborate on work and design some modules together. So I made a few modules, presented them on Muffwiggler, and the only reaction I got from people was like, can we buy the PCBs? I'm like, okay. And then I found out that my misunderstanding that since DIY, the D was more for solder than for design. But that's okay, because then these people became my customers. So this is how I got into Eurorack. So before Eurorack, I was making consumer electronic. So in 1998, we did the world's first MP3 CD player. That was just when MP3 started to take off. I worked for a couple of different companies. In the end, I ended up at a French company making portable MP3 players, portable MP3 recorders. We made something that we called tablets a few years before the iPad came out. In the end, we made Android phones and tablets. So this is my electronic background. Before that, then I started, as I said, into Eurorack. Started designing a few modules. So the very first module I made was this CV to MIDI to CV converter. That was never finished because I'm not a keyboard player, so it was kind of pointless for me to have a MIDI to CV converter. So now I mostly use it as a precision voltage source during development. I made a few other modules like a sequencer, like an oscillator, there's an envelope generator, and some others that I all showed in the Muffwiggler DIY forum. And then one day I found another module there that I found interesting. There was a Euclidean sequencer that was developed by Tom Whitwell, who was doing this one. That was using this LED matrix display to show the sequences. And I thought, that's nice, and I wanted to build it. And I bought one of these displays, but I never finished building that one because I thought it's nicer to show the sequences in a circle. So I made my first PCB that I ever made was this round one, where I soldered these RGB LEDs. And I built this module that I called Euclidean Circles instead of Euclidean sequences. And the other challenge I had with this module is I wanted to make something special. So I wanted to make a module that is just a single PCB. So you see the LEDs are on the front and the rest of the circuit is on the back, and it's just a panel. And I presented that on Muffwiggler, and then it wasn't just people asking me, can we buy the PCB? There was also people asking me, can I buy the module? So I'm like, okay. now I have to be a manufacturer. So I started making them. So the first 50 pieces of them I hand soldered on my kitchen table, like like it's good practice in Eurorack. But of course, over time that got too much, so I started manufacturing them, got some PCBs made in China, and then just assembled them at home. And so I slid into the whole thing of being a Eurorack maker. So my current lineup on modules that you can buy from VPME is Euclidean Circles. This is already version 2, and there's a 6 switches expander that you can use to mute and unmute each of the 6 trigger channels. There's Trig 31, which is a trigger to MIDI converter, because while I was developing Euclidean Circles, I didn't have the usual 2 rows of Euro just for drums. So I bought an old drum computer that had MIDI, and then I converted my Euclidean Circles triggers into MIDI using this module. And it was a prototype for a long time until people started asking me, because they saw it next to Euclidean Circles in my YouTube videos, and asked me, what's that? And I said, there's a trigger to MIDI. Oh, can we buy that? Okay, let's make it into products. I had another product. Then we have the Oscilloscope, which is a very tiny 6 HP only 2-channel oscilloscope and tuner. T43 is a precision adder and transposer. So you have basically inputs A and B that get summed together. You have a third input C that you can add or subtract. And then you have 6 more switches or 5 more switches that can add 1, 2, 4, 12, and 24 semitones. So in total, you can go up 43 semitones or 43 semitones down, or any combination of those. And this actually, it's an unusual module for me, because all my other modules have a CPU and are totally digital, and this one is analog. So, and the last module in the lineup is, and it's also bigger than all the others together probably, because at the beginning I was making very small modules because I thought I'm an unknown brand. Nobody's going to throw out their Mass or their René just for me. So I need to sneak into some empty spaces in the rack. So I tried to make small stuff. But I got more bold. So I made a 22 HP one now, which is 4 drum voices in one module. It's digital voices. So it's either digital internal algorithms, a bit like braids for drums, if you can call it that. But it also has an SD card slot, so you can put in a micro SD card, and then you can play samples or wavetables. So it's both a sample player, it's a wavetable oscillator, and it's a digital modeling drum computer, drum voice. And I can maybe show you something about how it came to be. This is the very first prototype that I made. In the beginning, I just had 16 red LEDs, but soon I found out that it's not enough to show everything that I need in the UI. So I went back to, what can I do? Let's see, RGB LED circles, I know that. So I added that. And the first prototype was using a ready-made development board. It was an STM32F3 running at 72 megahertz, but I very soon found out that it's not enough for all the algorithms, so I had to overclock it to like 100 megahertz to even get my algorithms running. So then I made the first version of the panel, is this top left one, where you see that all the input jacks are at the bottom, the inputs and the outputs. But I very soon found out that those are blocking the other buttons and access to the potentiometers and everything, especially when you have it in a skiff in front of you. So then I, like Moses parted the waters, I parted the jacks to the side and opened up the space in the middle so you can reach into the module. And yeah, these are the evolution steps. I tried to add some fancy fonts. In the end, I settled for a very conventional labeling of the buttons. All my beta testers, they actually have this version without any labeling. So they all had to use a Sharpie to write down what all the pods do. Right, so this is the final version as you can see it right now. And this went from 180 megahertz to an STM32F7 at 216 megahertz, just to have some more overhead and maybe in the future be even able to put more algorithms or some more effects or something on that. So Superboost 2018 was the first time I showed the module, and at that time it was only algorithms. So that was my braids for drums idea. And everybody was asking me, it's a drum computer, does it play samples? And I'm like, no, it has these nice algorithms. Right, but can it play samples? Me like, okay. 1 year later, I'm at Superboost, and I said, look, there's a micro SD card. It plays samples and wavetables. And everyone was like, oh, cool, tell us about the algorithms. So there you go. But now you have both, so both camps can be happy, and you can use both together at the same time. So these are the built-in algorithms. There's 15. There's a slot free for a 16th one or something special. You have 3 kick drums. You have 2 snare drums. You have 2 hi-hats. You have clap and cowbell, of course. You have some kind of carpal string synthesis. You have something like struck element, like a modal resonator. There's a very simple pinged ladder filter, which is basically going back to my very first time at Schneider's when I showed them Euclidean circles, and they had it in their showroom rack. And I thought they would connect it to some drum voices, but this guy just connected it to a filter. I'm like, why are you connecting a drum module to a trigger sequencer to a filter? And then he put the filter in almost resonance and just pinged it, and it made some nice sounds. So I said, okay, I need to have that as an algorithm. And there's something like Buchla bongos. There's a wave folder running into a low-pass gate, into an envelope. There's a VCO, but different waveforms from sine to triangle to saw to square that you can just use as a short VCO with an envelope on top of it. And then when you turn past the first circle and you go to samples and wavetables, so then you have 33 sets of samples or wavetables. So you can assign each of these 32 to one of the 4 drum voices. You can put 128 samples into one folder, so this is assigned to one voice, and the mod pod is used to go through them. Or you can have up to 64 wavetables, and then you can use the mod pod to morph between them. And in total, I can handle 1024 samples on the card. You have 4 CV inputs that can be assigned to any of the potentiometers, or to pan, or to volume. You have 4 internal LFOs with different LFO shapes that you can also assign to any of the controls. There's a built-in mixer. There's a stereo out left and right. So you can mix down your voices into stereo, or you can isolate one voice on one output to run it to something else and the other 3 on the other one. And there's a built-in 3-band equalizer and a compressor. And this equalizer is not your typical mastering equalizer that is very clean or anything. It's more like something to use for sound shaping than for mastering. And also this compressor is basically, it's a single knob compressor. It's just to make your sound fatter. It's not the SSL compressor. But I think it's still fun. So I think we should now switch to the other camera, and I can show some of the features. Right, so what we have here is Euclidean circles providing triggers. We have QD for the drum sounds. We have a T43 that we use instead of a keyboard to play some CVs. We have the scope to see what we're doing, and then we're going with one more LFO. There's a DSP for a bit of effects, and then we're going out into the mixer. So if we start with one drum, which is this one I put on a kick drum. So this is basically a sequence out of Euclidean circles. 4 on the floor kick. And what we're listening to right now is an algorithm. So this is like an 808. It's like a pitchable 808 kick. There's another kick which is more like an FM. Like an FM kick. There's another kick model here. Snare drum. Sorry. Hi-hat. Just a second. Yeah, there's your clap and hi-hat. I think there's maracas in the middle. I forgot that one. Just going through all of the algorithms, just did you get a feeling for what's there? And the next step, then we're in samples. So this is a folder full of samples. So this is kick samples, different ones. And basically, if I open the decay fully, then it plays the sample in the full length as it is on the card. But then you can also shorten it by shortening the decay. These are snare samples. Each of the samples can be pitched up and down 1 octave. So there's a set of about 1,000 samples and wavetables on the cards. The sets, the drums sets. One set of samples is from Matze, who was playing here. The other one, two others are from German artists that I know. And the third set is some really weird samples from Richard Devine. So there's like 300 samples from Richard Devine that are also on the thing. And then we also have wavetables. And basically, on the wavetables, if you open the decay fully, then it's like an oscillator that's running all the time. That you can morph through the different wavetables. Okay, let's go back to the kick drum. So as I said, there's a built-in mixer. So if I go to the middle of this switch, I have the mixer for all of the 4 voices. I can select, if I select the kick drum, I can make it louder or turn it off. When I hold this button, I have the pan control. So right now it's in the middle, so I can put it to the left, which is dry. And the right goes through the reverb. And the same for the other channels. So let's put in some more voices. So this is one of the Richard Devine sample sets here. There's a wavetable playing here. And this is one of the hi-hat models. So the next thing that we have is we can have 4 CVs that we can enter here. And when you put the switch on the bottom setting, then we're controlling the CVs. So right now I can pick one CV. For example, this one is the CV that's coming from the LFO. It's assigned to the decay. I can design it somewhere else. It's assigned to the decay of this voice. And when I open the attenuator, then you hear that the sound gets longer and shorter because this LFO is modulating the decay of this voice. Oh. Then I have another trigger from Euclidean Circles going into the CV control here, and this one is assigned to the volume of the blue voice, of the kick voice. So when I open this one up, then you hear that I have like it's like an accent. So each time we're at 12 o'clock, there's a trigger there, and it boosts the volume. So it's used like an accent. So the third CV is assigned to the pitch of the wavetable oscillator. So now I can use the T43 to change the pitch. And this is set to volt per octave, so I could control I could use a normal sequencer or a keyboard to play this like a normal voice. So these are CVs. There's 4 of them that you can assign. And then we also have 4 internal LFOs. And when you press 2 of these buttons together, you access one of the 4 LFOs. So staying on this voice, we can modulate the wavetable morphing with an LFO. So now on this voice we have the decay controlled through an external LFO, and the wavetable morphing is on the internal LFO, and we can also change the pitch. And now I go to the hi-hat and I open up the attenuators for the other LFOs on the pitch and on the decay. So now this voice is modulated by 2 of the internal LFOs. One LFO is controlling the wavetable morphing on this one, and the fourth one is when I go back to the one that is playing the samples. I use the fourth LFO in a special mode where basically every trigger on this voice triggers a different drum sample. So it goes through the folder and then it starts at the beginning. And when we put all of that together, it's like that. As I said, there's the mixer, so I can change the volume of every voice. There's also a built-in equalizer, so when I click once here, I have basically bass. I have middle. And I have the highs. And there's a built-in compressor. This is the dry signal, and this is the signal run through the compressor. And that's basically it for the QD. There's one more thing I wanted to tell about the Euclidean circles, because this is version 2. So version 1 was a purely Euclidean rhythms machine, but in version 2, there's another mode where you can use it as a 6-channel step sequencer. So I can, for example, take the bass drum channel and I turn it to a step sequencer, and now I have a cursor, so I can basically design my own pattern. And the other new feature on version 2 of Euclidean Circles is this button, which is a macro button that there's a library of functions that you can assign to it. So let me see. Right now the function that is assigned to it is the freeze function, and the freeze function means I press the button and then I can change the pattern. And when I release the button, it jumps back to the original one. So I can show this here with the bass, with the kick drum. So I put a fill, and then when I release it, it jumps back to the original one. Another function is the fill function. So you hold the button, and when you and there's other functions like start, stop, like mute, like reset, and so on. So that's version 2 of Circles. There's the quad drum voice, the scope to see what you're doing, and that's basically the demonstration from my side. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. As I said, ask me anything. Oh, I forgot one thing. Sorry, I forgot one thing. QD also has presets, internal ones, so you can also save your current pattern in a preset, and then you can load a different one. Or go back to the one that I just saved. And there's 4 banks of 16 presets. There's even more here, so let me see. So that was it. Again, thank you.
Everything gets stored after power down?
Yes, all the settings. I mean, the potentiometer settings, they're stored by being physical controls. Everything else is saved like after 5 seconds. So if you basically power down, I can just do that. Let me see. I can plug it, power it back up, and you're back where you begin. Exactly, where you left off. And all that is also stored. If you store it explicitly in a preset, then you can recall it at any time. And then for the pods, you can decide either it's jump recall, so it jumps immediately to the new position, or it's like the recall where you need to find the old value and then go from there. So you can even select one of them. The CV inputs for samples and wavetables can be volt per octave. Then you can play them like a normal instrument. Otherwise, they go up 1 octave or down 2 octaves. I mean, wavetables can go up and down 2 octaves, and samples up or down 1 octave. Samples are 48 kilohertz, 16-bit mono files. It will also play 44.1, but then it's a bit pitched up. Yeah. The samples can basically be as long as your card is, as much size. You can even put an hour of a sample on it. But it always plays it from the start, so as soon as you trigger it, it's going to start at the beginning. No, it's in what it does. It's limited in terms of controls. Basically, you have pitch and decay for every voice, and there's this mod pod that in the models does something to the algorithm. In the sample, if you have a sample, it chooses which sample you use. In the wavetable, it morphs through them. I didn't want to make a super complex UI on top of that, where you have to remember so many button presses to do more than that. Could be added, but probably I wanted to stop there. This is also why I don't have an OLED. I mean, from the beginning, I said I don't want to have a display on it, because as soon as I put the display, there's going to be a menu 5 levels deep. So you have to learn a bit about the colors and the switch settings. But from the people who have it, I kind of heard that it's not so difficult to learn. It's also performance oriented. I spaced the pods out so you can control everything. You have access to the mute button, so you can do some stuff like quickly, like. Yeah.
It sounds like you got a lot of feedback from forums while you were designing it. I'm just wondering if you had any like filter as to when people are saying I want this, 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 and this, how to say yeah, I want to put that in, or I don't want to put that in.
Yeah, this is one of the advice that I actually got from this friend that I had that turned out to be a Eurorack software developer. He told me you need to learn to say no to people very. And actually, circles I did on my own mostly. I got only a bit of feedback because I presented it at a stage where it was very advanced. For QD, it was like that I have this version that you see here. It looks a bit different. This is still the old version running on only 180 megahertz that 4 testers have since over a year. And of course, their feedback, because they're musicians, 2 of them playing on stage live, and one of them doing a lot in his studio, and the other one too. Their feedback is, of course, I count that more than random feedback on a forum. But of course, I try to accommodate everything. But as I said, you need to learn to say no very quickly, very early, and then yeah.
Did you have like a strong design concept that you measured stuff against?
So the question is, did I have a design concept that I measured against? Well, I knew kind of being in the scene since 2015. I knew kind of what's out there. I knew drum modules. I talked to people and they told me, oh yeah, my drums is those 2 rows of Euro is my drums. And I said, okay, there must be something between just playing samples in a tiny single voice sample player and 2 rows of Euro. There must be something in between. And so I tried to make something compact. So it's like, it can be your single drum solution if you want. So that was kind of my idea. I wanted something that can be played on stage. I want something performable. That was one of the things I wanted to do. And I wanted something that, and I had some discussions with people that told me, yes, I have this nice drum rack and it takes 42 CVs, but I don't have 42 CVs. Because if you want to modulate everything, it's nice that you have all these CV inputs, but you also need to have the CV outputs for it. So then I said, maybe we don't need that many CVs. Maybe 4 CVs and 4 internal LFOs is enough to animate your drums enough in a small setup, because if you CV control everything, then the audience doesn't know what's going on, because you totally lose all the coherence of the drums. So yeah, so this is like the compromise. And of course, because it's a circle in a square, everything is 4. So it's 4 voices, it's 4 CV inputs, it's 4 LFOs, it's 4 mute buttons. So it's my squaring of the circle. That was a kind of a form maxim, and the function a bit had to follow. So I could have put more pots, but I couldn't have put it in that nice square. So it's a bit also driven by form. And of course I had to put an LED circle, because that's what I do. Yeah.
I don't know if I missed it, but even if, I think it's still very important. When will it be out? Is it out?
It's out. It's over there in the rack. It's out. It's out.
How much is it?
360 is the MSRP. Manufacturer suggested retail price is 360.
And do you also sell the PCB as a Euclidean Circles?
No, this is not a DIY project. So Circles and Zero Scope, I still sell PCBs because it's kind of where I came from, the Mavic, the DIY section. So I kind of keeping that alive. And especially Circles is not so easy to solder. So this one, if you can solder a mutable module, you can build this one. So there's actually no challenge in soldering it. So I want to, if I make more DIY, it's going to be something challenging. It's, yeah. I mean, of course it's all SMT, but still I can solder it in 10 minutes. So if I give it out as a PCB, it's not really a challenge. And I want to challenge people. Even the people who just want to solder, I need to challenge them as well a bit. Yeah. So it's a retail only module. It's probably also going to come out in 4U format for Buchla. Circles, I already showed the SuperBoost in 4U. And probably QD is also going to be available probably next year. There was another question over there? No? Okay, well, if that's it. There's one.
So the question to this module, there was a post from you about a cheap Chinese laser set. Might this, I think on Facebook you posted something?
Cheap Chinese laser?
Harp?
Laser harp. Oh yes, that was something I found randomly on the internet.
There's no idea to get this into a Eurorack.
Maybe that's your way into being a Eurorack manufacturer. So the question was, I posted a link to some kind of laser harp, a cheap Chinese laser harp thingy that I found on AliExpress. So, and the question was if I had an idea to make it in a Eurorack, and I said, it's your chance. You can stumble into Eurorack like I did. Okay, I think that for the end, Matthias wanted to make some more music.
Yes, please.
If we can find him. There you go. So thanks again, Matze, for the music.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can do something. I want to add, so working with Vladimir was really cool. So everything I suggested was basically done. So thank you very much.
So I do listen to feedback.
Yeah. So it was like about the mutes were like muting the audio, and then if I unmuted, then I had the last kick drum playing in the background in the front. So I asked him, can you do like MIDI mutes and whatever? Now he implemented like 3 modes where you can choose from what you want. It's like very sophisticated under the hood. So it looks very simple, but you can have a lot of options done to your workflow. It's like fun. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you program these options on the module itself,
Mhm.
or via SD card? Or
No, there's a function menu.
So basically, when you're in this top setting and you press long, then you have a bunch of settings here that you can enable.
Okay.
enable and disable.
Yeah. So
Do you
but
have
you,
an operating system running, or is it bare metal?
Well, it's bare metal. No operating system. Not that I'm not that sophisticated yet in terms of modules.
operating system. So I try to only use the module here maybe. So maybe I go through some more sounds and I explain what I want to do with them. So this is like the kick drum. It can this is samples, yeah. So which it's very nice to have them here. Also the built-in ones are nice. So you have the snare, and all the sounds are very, very versatile. So you can go from very low to very high, long, make it very dark, use it as a bongo or whatever. Yeah? So it's a lot of stuff. Even the hi-hat I was using in this set, maybe here. This is basically the car plus strong sound. So, but if I tune, I found out like this, it sounds like a hi-hat.
Yeah, because this is the high pass filter.
Yeah, and I kind of liked it. So you can like really do sounds a little more alive than your usual hi-hat, and you can also animate all these parameters very, very carefully with the internal LFOs. It's super fun. This one, it's the wavetable sound. Which I'm modulating with the sequencer, so I have a pitch CD. Also, like this memory functionality. It's also really cool. So you can switch between different states of the groove. Like like it's the same rhythm coming in. What you switch is basically the sound engine. So like this one or. So it's really fun to make like breakdowns and then switch to something completely different. So this is like also very nice to use. And also the mixer is fun. So you have mutes for all the stuff. So I'm muting them basically here, but I also can mute them here. Like, and if you don't want to, or if your sequencer is like has no accessible mute functionality, so you can just do it on the module. It's like it's really cool. And this is basically also switching between samples. It's just random drum sounds, yeah, and there's you can also go really short, and then you have like tiny attacks that are nice. So I have so what I'm doing here in my setup, all the rest is coming from the other module. So and you have this nice filter section. You can filter the mid, make it very. This is also something I wanted. Like, please make the mid-range filter very low, so you have a lot of bottom end and like fat sound. It's fun. So higher end, low end. Okay. drums covered in this. This is like really interesting. It's a lot of drum you get for in this small space. So otherwise, I would use a lot of more modules. So this enables you to build a very small system with a lot of options. So it's fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for the music today.
Yeah. So.
And thank you for doing things with a module that I have no idea how you do them. But